Hey VC, this is one of my rare contributions to a contest that's going on. I don't do contests that often, I have to say. It's only when my imagination gets tweaked by the contest itself. And it was great to see the other day MphsVinylJim and the Missus back in YouTube action and coming up with a great idea for a contest, which is the basic theme is the best left-right punch, which a band has come up with, which is basically their first album and their second album. And second albums are notoriously difficult, so if a band can come up with a great second album following the first album, which run one into the other, then that's the theory behind the contest, or the theme behind the contest. Myself, I will do a right-left punch, being a southpaw, but I don't think that breaks the rules of the contest. The reason it was great to see Jim and the Missus back, there are two types of video I like to watch. There are those people who do videos and their music taste endorses my own. So essentially, I would trust what they recommended to me implicitly. Someone like Brett or Rob Paniques or any of those people who regularly communicate with, or LJ, all those people who I see records they've got that I've got already or would like to have. And there are other people like Jim and the Missus who are got a musical taste which is totally different to my own. But I always find it educational to watch what they are showing, and occasionally things do, like we had a bit of a vibe on Albert King last week, but I always find it interesting because they tell me things I don't know, and I feel sure that, and I feel sort of slightly envious in some ways because it's like a depth of knowledge I don't think I'll ever have myself for a period of time and a type of record. But Jim's a younger guy than me by the look of it, but features heavily on the 60s. But we really know he's just the anchor man. He's the talent, as they say in the business. We know that the Missus is the real brains behind the whole operation. She writes his scripts for him, I'm sure. She's bankrolling the whole operation. But we never get to see the Missus. In my mind's eye, I reckon, listen to her, she's maybe 20, 21, something like this. Anyway, enough of some cheap attempts to try and wangle an advantage in the contest. I've made a few notes on this one, and I did check to see I didn't spot anybody else or the person I thought might come up with this band. In 1976, a band formed called Joy Division, and very punk influenced, and over the next 3 years they honed and became post-punk essentially, and were influenced by a lot of German music from the early 70s. And in 1979 this album came out. This is Unknown Pleasures. This is only a reissue. I never had the original, and it was on Factory Records originally. I say this is my reissue, which I got perhaps about last year. It was on Factory Records and didn't sell that well. The initial run was 10,000 albums, and the band consisted of Ian Curtis, Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook and Stephen Morris. This was sort of earlier in 1979. In the summer of 79, they actually brought out a non-album single called Transmission. This is again a reissue from the recent box set that Joy Division did. And Transmission took off, and as a consequence then people started buying the album, and Joy Division took off and became a heavy touring schedule. There's a good film, I think it's called Closer, about the band, and but unfortunately the lead singer Ian Curtis was beset with mental depression issues, I believe. Also his marriage was not great. He'd got another partner who he took on the road with him, and he was also diagnosed with epilepsy, which he often used to suffer seizures on stage. So just not a very sort of happy state of mind and a happy place to be. But in terms of career, the band were taking off. I mean, this was the soundtrack of when I was in the sixth form, which is where you go 16 to 18 in the UK, do your A-levels just before going to university, and it was the soundtrack. And sadly, in May of 1980, on the eve of the band's first tour to the United States, he'd moved back home with his wife and his very, very young daughter, who was just a baby. And his wife came back and found that he'd taken his own life, and that was really shocking. And it was a time that the music industry used to go in cycles of people dying who mean a lot. So there was, about the same time, there was John Lennon, there was Bon Scott, there was who else have we got? Bob Marley, all dying in that time. And Ian Curtis was not as famous really as he clearly is now. And that was in May 1980, and the band had already finished their second album, and the artwork had already been done. And that album came out in July of 1980, in the summer. I remember where I was working then, and that album was this, Closer. And this is an original UK copy, a bit discoloured now. And the real standout single on this album is Love Will Tear Us Apart, which I always think there's a fantastic song is one which can be covered by different people in different styles, and it's still a great song. And that is one of the last great songs. There are two versions that I know are very different. There's the Paul Young, which was out in 1983. There's another one by a band, if you just bear with me a moment I shall tell you what it is. VT, that took me a little bit longer. June Tabor and the Oyster Band, and this is a very traditional English folk music, and that is a fantastic version. So that was a standout track, but the album was heavily influenced by allegedly by a book by J.G. Ballard called The Atrocity Exhibition, and that is the name of the first track on here. I've never read The Atrocity Exhibition. It doesn't really appeal, to be honest. It's supposed to be very controversial, particularly in the States. And I think these two albums, Unknown Pleasures and Closer, are sublime. I think the fact that they were the only two proper albums the band ever did makes them that killer 1-2 punch. And what is very strange is the picture on the front of Closer there. That is a photograph of an Italian family's tomb, and that had already been selected before Ian Curtis did what he did. And I just find these two albums, if you could leave one body of work, it would be that. The interesting thing is, I've got another memory from very early 1981. I went to an interview to Aston University in Birmingham, and I can remember talking, because there was a group of people who didn't know each other, and me and another lad from Manchester got talking about Ian Curtis. Unfortunately, I didn't get the grace to get into Aston, so I never went there. But I'm starting a new job in 2.5 weeks, which is about 2 miles from the university. It's the first time I've ever worked in Birmingham, so you can always get eventually where you need to be. But anyway, Jim and the Missus, that is my contribution to your contest. I think it's a great thread. Of course, anybody who knows Joy Division knows that the other 3 band members, Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook and Stephen Morris, went on to form New Order. That might be an opportunity for somebody else to do a killer 1-2 punch, but that's mine. So great idea, guys, and looking forward to seeing what other people come up with.